Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Kamar Mehboob from Physiology Department of Hyderabad Medical University. In this video, we will discuss the transport of oxygen in the blood and tissue fluids. Before discussing this specific topic, I would like to tell you one thing that in your textbook, the explanation of oxygen transport in the blood that is somewhat different. They have mentioned some of the portion of the transport initially, then they discuss the carbon dioxide transport, then again discuss the oxygen transport and then carbon dioxide transport. But I am telling you the transport of oxygen in a one sequence, and after the completion of its transport in the blood, I will discuss the carbon dioxide transport in the blood separately. So please, students, you must concentrate and focus this video. Follow me for the transport of oxygen in the blood. As we all know that the oxygen is picked up from the lungs by the RBC, and then coming to the tissue level, oxygen is dropped down while the carbon dioxide is picked up by RBC and then coming to the lungs to be expired in the air. This function is explained through an animation also. In this animation, you can see the oxygen coming from the lungs that is picked up by the RBC. As RBC is picking the oxygen, you can check the change in the color of the RBC. Then it comes to the tissues where it drops the oxygen, and again it is ready to pick more and more oxygen from the lungs. What is the detail of this process and how it takes place, that is the thing to be discussed. Through this animation, I am going to show you that at alveolar level, the oxygen is picked up by the RBC. You can check the change in the color of the RBC, that is, here it is bluish in color at this end when it is carrying carbon dioxide. At the alveolar level, carbon dioxide by the RBC that is dropped down, and at the same time oxygen is picked up, so that now you can see the color that is the pink red. At the tissue level, the opposite thing take place. Number one thing, change in the color because of that RBC is going to drop the oxygen in the alveoli, and because of the picking up of the carbon dioxide, the color is now again become bluish. This thing happens at the tissue level. This process, now I have shown you the animation, but how it take place, what are the details, now we are going to discuss this one. So it is much more clear that oxygen transport in the blood take place so that oxygen is carried by the blood to be reached and utilized by the tissue cells. But as we all know that in the blood we have two parts, plasma and cellular portion. Now the question is how much oxygen is picked up by the plasma and how much by the cellular portion. And in the cellular portion, the main thing that is the RBC. Regarding oxygen transport, this thing is not so much important, but when we will discuss the carbon dioxide transport, this thing becomes much more important. But it is necessary to mention here that due to low solubility, only 1.5% of oxygen is dissolved in plasma, while almost all, that is 98.5% of oxygen combines with the hemoglobin. This is the diagram to show the diffusion of oxygen from the alveoli to the pulmonary capillary blood. What happens that when the blood from the heart, that is from the right side of the heart, emerges from the right ventricle and comes to the lung for the oxygenation, it has the partial pressure of 40 mmHg. This is the diagram in which you can have the capillaries, that are the pulmonary capillaries. So, arterial end of the pulmonary capillary have the deoxygenated blood. At this end, the partial pressure is 40 mmHg. While we have discussed that in the alveoli, the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolar air, that is equal to 104 mmHg. You can check a great difference between these two partial pressure. What happens because of the great difference? The oxygen that diffuses easily from the alveoli to the blood capillary. So that at the other end, which is the venous end, we have equal pressure, that is 104. And this is the venous end of pulmonary capillary blood, that is having the oxygenated blood. So the blood which emerges out from the lung have the partial pressure of 104. This event is here graphically shown that at this end, arterial end, we have the pressure, that is 40 mmHg. As the diffusion process takes place at venous end, this becomes this 104 mmHg. Next thing, when the blood emerges out from the lungs and reaches to the left side of the heart, that is the left atrium. But a very important thing happens before it enters the left atrium. What is that thing? And it needs much more explanation. Before it enters to the left atrium, it is mixed with the venous blood coming through the bronchial vessels from the lungs. We have already discussed that the lungs, they have pulmonary circulation and also the bronchial circulation. Through the pulmonary circulation, oxygenation takes place, and through the bronchial vessels, the parenchyma, the lung substance itself, get its nutrition, and the waste products, they are removed. So actually these bronchial vessels or the venous blood coming from the lungs that have 40 mmHg pressure, and it is mixed with the 104 mmHg pressure, that is the arterial blood or the oxygenated blood which is coming directly from the lungs. This makes the total pressure equals to 95 mmHg. Now the blood which is coming to the left atrium or entering the left atrium, that has the 95 mmHg pressure, and totally 98% it is coming from the lungs, while 2% of blood that is mixed with the bronchial vessels blood. So we have discussed the blood changes, the partial pressure changes in the blood which occurs at the alveolar level. Then what happens when this blood enters into left atrium? From the left atrium, the blood goes to the left ventricle. From the left ventricle through the aorta, that is going to be supplied to whole of the body. Through the systemic circulation, this blood which is having the 95 mmHg partial pressure, that comes to the tissue level. What happens at the tissue level? This is the diagram to show the changes of the partial pressure which occurs at the tissue level. And one more thing I want to explain you, that you must be clear about these diagrams. Whenever in the viva you are asked to draw the transport of the blood, draw the transport of the oxygen in the blood, you must be clear what is the question. Either I am asking you to draw the transport at the alveolar level or the tissue level. So I would like to show you again the same diagram. This is the diagram to show you the diffusion of oxygen from the alveoli to the pulmonary capillary blood, that is at the alveolar level, and this one that is at the tissue level. So you must be clear what is the question, and accordingly you should answer. At the tissue level, now we have this tissue capillary. So at the arterial end, we have the partial pressure 95 mm Hg, while inside here, that is inside the tissue cells, because of the continuous utilization of the oxygen, there is drop of the partial pressure, which is now here equals to the 23 mm Hg. In the interstitium 40 mm Hg. Because of this great difference between the partial pressure, the oxygen easily diffuses inside to the tissue cells to be utilized, and so that drop of the partial pressure take place, and at the venous end we have 40 mm Hg. And this is the blood which is going to the right side of the heart, that is the right atrium, from there right ventricle, and through the right ventricle through the pulmonary capillary pulmonary vessel, it is going to be oxygenated in the lungs and through the capillaries. Then again we come to the same picture, that is the arterial end of the pulmonary capillary with the partial pressure of 40 mm Hg, and our cycle repeats. So this is all about the transport of the oxygen in the blood. But how? The next thing, what is the main specific thing which is carrying oxygen? That is, what is the role of the hemoglobin? One thing, and other thing, that is how much hemoglobin is going to combine with the or going to carry the oxygen, how much amount, and what is the relationship between the oxygen and hemoglobin, and what factors are going to affect this relationship. So answer is, start from here, that role of hemoglobin in the oxygen transport. For that, you can see this is the hemoglobin molecule over the RBC. Check the change in the color after carrying oxygen. Then it is going to drop the oxygen molecules at the tissue level. How much and other details now we will discuss one by one. You must know, you must be clear about the relationship of oxygen molecule with the hemoglobin, that it is a reversible combination, not the irreversible. That is, whenever the body needs oxygen, hemoglobin that separates and gives oxygen to the tissue cells. This is an animation to show how the hemoglobin molecule, this one, is carrying oxygen, and it carries oxygen up to its maximum. That is until it's completely saturated with the oxygen molecules. As there is increase of the hemoglobin oxygen saturation take place, this graph increases. This is a very important graph which is called the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. The first thing that you must clear about that, what is meant by the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Why we are giving this name to this curve? Oxygen hemoglobin combination is, as I have told you, that it is a reversible combination, not the irreversible. When our body tissue needs oxygen is separated from the hemoglobin to be utilized by the body cells. So how this change occur, at which stage this change occur, and how much, all things they are mentioned here. And I will explain one by one. From this diagram, you can see On this end, we are having hemoglobin saturation. Here we have the partial pressure of oxygen and here the volume percentage. Firstly, I will discuss these two factors and after that I will discuss this factor. This is the blood which emerges out from the lungs. At this stage, the blood has 104 mmHg pressure and the saturation is 98%. These lines that are the red, green and this extra red line. It is I have drawn these lines for yourself, for you because I want to explain all these things clearly and to mention the different steps clearly. At the lungs, at alveolar level, we have the partial pressure 104 and saturation is 98%. In the left atrium, the partial pressure drops down and it is shown here by the green line. It comes to the 95 while because of the mixture of the venous blood to the arterial blood, the saturation also decreases to 97%. Then from left atrium, it enters into the systemic circulation to be reached to the tissue level and where it has the partial pressure of 40 mmHg with the saturation that is 75 mmHg. And from this, that is from the tissues, again the venous blood comes to the right side of the heart, then the lungs and to the left atrium. So the cycle is repeated. These lines, these extra lines, they are showing the change in the partial pressure of the oxygen with the change of the hemoglobin saturation. Now the remaining thing that remains is this parameter. For that we must have this calculation that 100 ml of blood that carries 15 grams of the hemoglobin. In the 100 ml of blood, we have the 15 gram of hemoglobin, while 1 gram of hemoglobin can carry 1.34 ml of oxygen. So, what happens for the 15 gram? Almost 20 ml of oxygen can be carried out by the 15 gram per 100 ml of the blood. In other words, we can say 20 ml of oxygen that make 100% hemoglobin saturation for the oxygen. Now coming again to this diagram, you can see that 20 match to the 100% here. This is the thing which I have discussed now. 20 ml, this is that is 20 ml of oxygen makes the 100% saturated hemoglobin. This is the diagram to show the different factors which shift or which affect this relationship of oxygen with the hemoglobin. Actually, this graph is important because of the reversible combination of oxygen and hemoglobin. In different body conditions, whenever our body needs more oxygen, hemoglobin dissociate oxygen rapidly at low level. You can see this one. At low level, easily it can leave the oxygen to be utilized by the tissue cells more quickly and more rapidly. A number of factors can displace this dissociation curve in one or other manner when the blood becomes slightly acidic with the pH decreasing from the normal, as you can see from here, that from 7.4 below, that is 7.2. The hemoglobin dissociation curve on the average about 15% to the right, it is shifted 15% to the right. And same air increase in the pH from the normal 7.4 to the 7.6, it comes to the above level and similar to the shifting that is the left on the left side. In addition to pH changes, several other factors also affect these one, and they may be increase carbon dioxide concentration, increase blood temperature, or 2-3 bpg. Before discussing all these factors, I would like to explain this thing that is called the Bohr effect. What is that one? As the blood passes through the tissues, carbon dioxide diffuses from the tissue cells into the blood. This increases the blood carbon dioxide concentration, which in turn raises the blood carbonic acid and the hydrogen ion concentration. These effects shift the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve to the right and downward, forcing oxygen away from the hemoglobin and therefore delivering increased amounts of the oxygen in the tissues. A shift of the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve to the right in response to increase in the blood carbon dioxide and H ion concentration has a significant effect by enhancing the release of oxygen from the blood in the tissues and enhancing oxygenation of the blood in the lungs. This typical effect is called the Bohr effect. Now comes the explanation of all other factors. To understand the effect of these, the best example is the exercise, and for that one I'm showing you this extra diagram so that all other factors can be learned easily. As we all know that during exercise the tissue cells they need more and more oxygen. There is depletion of nutrients, there is accumulation of carbon dioxide, lactic acid and all these things. So collectively they combine, and we take the example of exercise. So from this you can have the best idea that during exercise this hemoglobin dissociation curve drops down to, and what is the purpose? The easy availability of the oxygen and rapid availability of the oxygen to the exercising tissue cells. That's the importance or actual importance of this curve and the reversible combination of the oxygen with the hemoglobin. This is all about the transport of the oxygen in the blood and role of the hemoglobin. One more thing I want to tell you about the carbon monoxide, because it is a very lethal gas and it must be clear that how it is going to affect the body. Combination of the hemoglobin with carbon monoxide, that is very much rapid as compared to the oxygen, and it displaces the oxygen and combines with it. Carbon monoxide combines with the hemoglobin at the same point on the hemoglobin molecule as does oxygen. It can therefore displace oxygen from the hemoglobin, thereby decreasing the oxygen carrying capacity of blood. Further, it binds with about 250 times as much density as oxygen, which is demonstrated by the carbon monoxide hemoglobin dissociation curve and this one. And that's the reason that whenever the body is exposed to this lethal gas, that is the carbon monoxide, it displaces oxygen very quickly and combines with the hemoglobin, and so that the death can occur. So dear students, this is all about the transport of the blood, the transport of the oxygen in the blood, and I am also giving you an assignment regarding this oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, and you must draw and label this curve with these extra lines which I have mentioned here, and also these extra comments which I have mentioned on the graph, because this is all about the summary of the transport of oxygen in the blood. So this is your assignment, and for the next video keep watching my videos, and Allah Hafiz. Thank you.